Hello there. I've got a general question about the global power structure. And this question it's an anonymous question. And they're asking, is there any organization that is resisting the global power structure? All right. And what this question implies is that there is this global power structure, this whole collective group of them, those, they, whoever they are. It's them, the global elite. We come up with all kinds of different names for these people. But you really need to understand what the global power structure is composed of. And I think that will help you understand the topic of resistance in that sense. The global power structure is composed of a lot of different organizations. Okay, and these individual organizations are just a group of people who assemble together for a common purpose and for mutual advantage. All right? It's just an organization. That's any organization. An organization is a group of people who assemble together for a common purpose and for mutual advantage. And there are a lot of these different organizations. And of course, many of them do have the ability to make decisions that will affect your life directly or indirectly. And that's just the way things go, all right? That's just the way that things are as you are a part of this world. So there are many different organizations already that exist, and all of them working together because they do work together in one way or another. There are relationships between these different organizations, and these organizations can be a private group. It can be a group of families. It can be just a group of close friends. It can be a government. It can be an agency in the government. It can be a combination of an agency in the government and another group of friends or families. It can be between two other different governments. There are so many different organizations. I wouldn't even begin to try to come up with a list. And they all collectively, because they are participants in the global economy, they are participants in the world, in civilization, and they have influence and they have power, or they make decisions that do affect other people. Because of this, we call them influential and important, all right? But what's important to recognize is that there does exist a large number of these organizations, and sometimes they work together, and other times they don't. All right? It's not as if there is this global they, and that they all are together as them, who are those who are all against you. It's not like that, okay? Sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. All right? Sometimes they operate in a way that they have no relationships with other groups at all. Some other groups, there are no relationships between them at all, and other times they are very much connected and working together with other groups. Now, there are other times when they are opposed to one another. And so the resistance is between the existing organizations of the global power structure. All right, let me say that again. The resistance to the global power structure exists as part of the global power structure. Okay, these different organizations, they resist one another. They are in competition with one another. And it's always been that way. All right, there are always groups of people who have organized in one form or another in order to work together for mutual advantage, and there will be someone else who's going to compete with them. Okay? And so the resistance already exists, for the most part, within the global power structure. The easiest way to spot this kind of resistance is when there is war. All right? That's the easiest way to spot big resistance. Wars take place whenever these groups who are a part of the global power structure, whenever these groups are no longer cooperating with one another. They're no longer working together. Or you got one group who just wants to invade and steal the stuff from somebody else. There are lots of reasons why war takes place. I think one of the most popular reasons has to do with an experience of theft, that in general it's a robbery. But there are other reasons or other primary motives. It just depends on which organization in the group of organizations is a part of the war effort. All right. So the question is, are there any organizations that resist the global power structure? With this kind of a description, every organization that is a part of the global power structure is also resistant to the global power structure, all right? Because they don't always work together at the same time. And they are often in conflict with each other, and there is often competition with each other. There are plenty of groups, plenty of organizations, and plenty of opportunities for disagreements. And these things happen all the time. And so the global power structure exists in a state of resistance all the time. All right? Now, when it comes to those of us who are not a part of any of these organizations, I was a part of one of these organizations a long time ago. They asked me to become a permanent member in a sense, and I said, no way, I'm not going to do that. And so I was out. They said, well, then you're just not going to be a part of anything that we're doing. And I said, fine, I'll go back to school, learn how to do something else. And that's exactly what I did. I'm not a part of any organized group of any kind whatsoever that would be recognized as influential or part of the global power structure or resistant to it. And I don't intend to. That's just not the way that I would like to live my life. But other people can. If you want to join one of these groups and be part of the resistance to someone else, then you can do that. It just depends on the individual, and nobody should be passing judgment. I should not judge you if you want to participate in one group or not participate, and you should not be passing judgment on me with regards to these things. When it comes to faith in the Lord Jesus, I am of the sincere belief that God is interacting with each one of his children personally and individually, and that he may very well encourage someone to be a part of the resistance, or to be a part of an organization of some kind. And if he encourages you to do that, you absolutely should do that. You should, yes, definitely. And if he was to tell me to do this tomorrow or next week or something, you bet I would. I sure would be a part of that. But that's my decision that I for myself have already decided I'm not going to be a participant in these things, because there are other things that I would like to do with my life, and that's my decision. But if my God should encourage me to go and be a part of some kind of resistance of some kind, and join with some organization, certainly I would do that without question. Well, I might ask a few questions, but still, all right. I want you to understand that the resistance already exists. It will always exist, and that we don't necessarily have to build or join a specific kind of organization that would compete with the other organizations that have their power and their structure. Unless, of course, you just decide that you want to do that, or if God may direct you to do that, then by all means. But in this case, you would have to ask me if you wanted to know what my opinion would be, or what the complications you may face, or whether what you're going to try to do is going to succeed or fail. If you want to ask details like that, for a specific kind of organization that either already exists or that maybe you would like to form, I might be able to give you some insights for that. And that's another question you could send me to aaron@aaronbudgen.net. And I can perhaps give you an answer to that. For example, many years ago, there was an event that happened when there were a lot of people who were murdered over in Waco, Texas by a governmental group of thugs, and they just went in and they just murdered a bunch of people for no legitimate reason. There were a lot of false reasons that were presented, but that was looked at later and figured out that it was just simply an experience, of lawless murder for the most part. When that happened, there were a lot of people who banded together and formed militias. That was the big militia movement that sprouted during the early 90s. After a number of years, there were a group of militias that had assembled for self-protection. They thought that maybe these people or some other people might get the same idea and just go ahead and just surround your home and just murder you, and nobody's going to do anything about it because there's all these accusations about maybe these crimes were happening. Maybe we would like to think, kind of thing. There were a group of militias that had assembled together in a small town, in a small farmhouse, just getting together to talk about what they might do in the future. And I was there, not as a member of any particular group. I was just there because I knew them, and I explained to them that what they were trying to accomplish would fail, that it wasn't going to work, and I spent several hours having this conversation with these leaders. And the end result, they went ahead and they disbanded. They realized that their organizations were not going to be effective for what they were trying to accomplish, and they needed to try to find other ways to solve the problems that they saw. And I proposed a few. I don't know what they did, but I can tell you that I've got experience when it comes to these kinds of things. That I have contributed to the lives of people in interesting ways you probably never would have suspected or thought of. And so if you'd like to form an organization, by all means, go ahead and ask me, maybe a regular political organization of some kind. I have a little bit of experience when it comes to those, enough to be able to tell you what will probably work and what probably won't work and why, and I might be useful. Now, this person who asked me this question was asking about specific groups as well. They asked about like the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is definitely part of the global power structure. Are they resistant to the global power structure? Well, in some ways they definitely are not. In other ways they are. They are resistant to other organizations when it comes to banking. Big time, all right? The Catholic Church is the largest banking cartel in the world. They are. And they loan out an enormous amount of money that they have accumulated over generations of people. An extraordinary amount of wealth exists and is under control of the organization of the Catholic Church, and they make loans. They loan money to all kinds of people, all right, in all kinds of different ways. And through loaning out money to governments or to financial institutions, or for people to just gamble with in the stock market, even. There's lots of ways that this money finds its way into people's lives. They have influence. Because, of course, they can decide to not issue a loan to a government or to a business that needs money, or there are lots of other things that they can do when it comes to the amount of money that they have. They can just buy stuff that's available for sale. They can be profound competitors in the world. They are profound competitors. So are they resisting the global power structure? In some ways, certainly they are. But in other ways, they're participating in the global power structure in ways that I certainly find to be quite destructive to people and to people's lives. So, that's something that you can study if you would like. But as for myself, I certainly would not become a member. I definitely would not. The person asked me about Freemasons. This is another group of people. It is another organization. The Freemasons are interesting because they are a generational organization. And this is something that you need to keep in mind when it comes to the global power structure. And that is that these generational organizations, they tend to change over time. When you get the third generation of people or the fourth generation of people, they don't have the same philosophical ideals as the people who founded the organization necessarily. And they have, whole new pursuits, whole new interests, whole new goals. The Catholic Church is not designed to allow for that kind of flexibility so much, but the Freemasons do have much more flexibility. I have read their sacred writings. I have had access to their books and stuff, and I've studied them carefully. They can hold things together in some ways, but most of the people who are a part of these these Masonic lodges, they don't believe the stuff, the doctrines and teachings and all the secret knowledge and stuff. They don't believe it. They're just there because they have connections with other people that increase their ability to conduct business in the community that they're in. It has more to do with business contacts for them. It doesn't have anything to do with their spiritual convictions at all. But there are others who do have sincere spiritual convictions. And so there is competition and there is resistance within these groups. All right? And another example would be the Democrat or the Republican kind of philosophical belief system. In the political world where we have presently two predominant political parties in our world, they do resist each other quite a bit. They appear to be in competition with each other quite a bit. And so you might look at one of them and say, well, this group is just totally evil, and they have to be resisted, and we have to overcome them and make sure that they don't get in power. And so you join the opposing group and say, well, we're going to be a part of that group, that organization. Unfortunately, that other organization can be just as corrupt and just as evil, but in other ways, in other ways. And so regardless of who's in power, you may find that they've got their own ways of being corrupt and their own ways of causing conflict and problems and their own ways of being destructive to the lives of the people who they represent in that sense. So, whether you join or participate in one group or the other is not necessarily a solution. You can be part of a resistance, but on the other hand, you might also be a part of other kinds of problems that you just may not necessarily be aware of that could be just as bad as what you were trying to resist from the other group. All right? And so to join in with an organization or to build an organization, to be in opposition or to be resistant to the global power structure that you don't like, you might find yourself being a part of the problem even more or contributing to the problem even more. Or you may find that you're just not able to resist well enough, or that you're not really solving the problems that need to be solved anyway. These are important things to take into consideration before you make decisions about what you will do with your life, with your time, and with your resources. All right, so I can answer this question kind of in a general way. Are there any organizations? The answer is that, well, the whole structure is composed of organizations that are resistant to each other already. And that may help you understand a little bit more about the dynamics of how things work. All right, thanks.